Ukrainian armed forces destroy Russia's rare Zemlya system. The Ukrainian armed forces achieved a significant success by destroying the rare Zemlya remote mining system in the Kursk region of Russia. This strategic move dealt a blow to Russia's critical infrastructure and weakened its defense capabilities in the region. The 413th Special Independent Motorized Artillery Battalion, OBBS, fighters neutralized the system in a coordinated operation with the BPS-78 Special Conversion Attack Helicopter Unit, BZ-MIL. Thanks to the coordination of troops, high-precision intelligence, and high-tech weapon systems, this rare and strategically important Russian mining system was successfully destroyed. Ukraine's attack is considered as an important step that could affect the course of the war by weakening Russia's defense lines. While no official statement has yet been made from Russia after the attack, this news from the Ukrainian front is interpreted as capable of changing the course of the war. Failed Russian infantry attack in Kursk region, thwarted by FPV drone. New footage clearly shows a failed attack by Russian infantry in the Kursk region of Russia. The attack was halted when Russian soldiers were targeted by an FPV drone as they huddled together behind cover behind a bench. The Russian soldiers who survived the impact of the attack retreated in panic. This incident demonstrated once again how critical it is to disperse troops and maintain appropriate distances during combat operations. The clustering of Russian troops together creates open targets that facilitate the opportunity for the enemy to inflict damage with explosive weapons such as grenades, rockets, artillery, and now FPV drones. Remaining dispersed on the battlefield remains a key factor to ensure both survival and operational success. Such strategic mistakes undermine the effectiveness of Russian forces on the ground, while reinforcing the defensive superiority of Ukrainian forces. Ukraine's precision operations using FPV drones have inflicted heavy casualties on Russian forces, demonstrating the importance of technological superiority on the battlefield. These developments are considered as important steps that strengthen Ukraine's defense strategy and neutralize Russia's offensive attempts. 46th Air Mobile Brigade repels Russian mechanized attack, Ukraine's great success on the ground. Paratroopers of Ukraine's 46th Airmobile Brigade successfully repelled a massive Russian mechanized offensive involving 46 units of equipment, achieving a significant defensive victory. The repulse of the attack disrupted the strategic plans of the Russian forces on the ground and halted the advance of the invading troops. Ukrainian paratroopers managed to stop the enemy's large-scale offensive by effectively using all available weapons during this difficult operation. As a result of the clashes, 9 infantry fighting vehicles, 2 tanks, 2 armored personnel carriers, and 2 motorcycles were destroyed. In addition, 11 infantry fighting vehicles were disabled due to fire damage, leading to significant losses in Russia's mechanized offensive capabilities. The heavy use of armored units and heavy weapons in the Russian offensive posed a serious threat to Ukrainian troops on the ground. However, the paratroopers of the 46th Air Mobile Brigade withstood this offensive with high discipline and coordination, forcing the enemy to make an unexpected retreat. This operation was successful thanks to the professionalism of the paratroopers and their effective tactics on the battlefield. By steadfastly holding Ukraine's defensive line, the paratroopers once again proved their superiority on the ground, preventing the rapid advance of Russia's armored units. The repulsion of the attack is considered a critical success for Ukraine's defense strategies. The failure of this attack, which was carried out by Russia with a large mechanized force, demonstrated how strong Ukraine's defense capabilities are and the resilience of its military units on the ground. Such successful defensive operations reinforce Ukraine's determination in the field and negatively affect the morale of the occupying forces. The 46th Air Mobile Brigade's intervention not only repelled the enemy on the ground, but also marked a significant victory, symbolizing Ukraine's spirit of resistance and military discipline. Ukraine's defense troops have developed strategic tactics to counter such attacks, which greatly hinder the advance of Russian forces. With its success on the ground, the 46th Air Mobile Brigade proved once again how strong Ukraine's defenses are. Ukrainian troops shoot down Russian Supercam drone with FPV technology. Ukrainian troops of KRKN FPV Company successfully shot down a Russian supercam drone using FPV technology. This operation once again demonstrated the effectiveness of Ukraine's use of technology in the field. While the strike dealt a blow to Russian surveillance and intelligence capabilities, the Achilles Battalion of the 92nd Brigade documented the success of the operation by capturing these moments from another angle. This incident stands out as a proof of how effectively Ukraine uses modern warfare methods. 108th Territorial Defense Brigade, successful attack with FPV drone. Russian Strela 10 system destroyed. Pilots of Ukraine's 108th Territorial Defense Brigade conducted a successful operation targeting a Russian Strela 10 anti-aircraft missile system. The pilots won an important defense victory by effectively using FPV drone technology to destroy this dangerous system. The FPV drone's precision strike disabled the enemy's anti-aircraft system, once again demonstrating the success of Ukrainian troops in modern combat tactics. Such Ukrainian successes in the field strengthen the defensive line and weaken Russia's air attack capacity. Effective operation by Ukrainian forces in Kursk region. Bridges on the Seam River destroyed. In the Kursk region of Russia, Ukrainian forces conducted effective operations targeting enemy equipment and personnel. These operations dealt a major blow to Russia's defense lines and led to the destruction of important military infrastructure. In particular, Ukrainian forces targeted bridges over the Seam River, greatly restricting the enemy's mobility and logistical support. The footage reveals that these Ukrainian operations had a wide impact. One of the bridges over the Seam River was completely destroyed, severely disrupting Russia's military operations in the region. The collapse of the bridge disrupted the logistical supply lines of Russian forces, complicating their mobility on the battlefield and causing the enemy to reconsider its strategic plans. Ukraine's successful operation is seen as a strategic step to weaken Russia's military control in the region by targeting its defense lines. Moreover, the modern military technologies and tactics used during these operations demonstrate how Ukraine is effectively fighting on the battlefield and damaging Russia's military infrastructure. Such operations in the Kursk region have once again demonstrated Ukraine's determination and military capacity to achieve its strategic goals. Russia's heavy losses, such as the destruction of bridges, contribute to Ukraine consolidating its military superiority in the region and influencing the course of the war. These operations prove how effective Ukraine's military strategy has been and how difficult it has made Russia's frontline defense. At this stage of the war, such Ukrainian successes are causing Russia to reconsider its military strategy and affecting the overall security situation in the region. Ukraine's operations in the Kursk region are seen as important steps that could change the course of the war, and this once again shows how critical Ukraine's struggle is in the international arena. There was excellent news from the Donets direction, namely the soldiers of the 59th Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade successfully coped with a tank attack by Russian troops in the area of the village of Perveskoy. In the Donets region. At the beginning of the offensive, Russian forces headed towards the contact line but encountered obstacles. The Russian tanked 72 B-3M moving in the wrong direction encountered difficulties which forced it to adjust its course. However, after correcting the trajectory, he came across a minefield previously placed by Ukrainian troops. The footage shown clearly shows how a Ukrainian FPD drone accurately strikes Russian armored vehicles. An instantaneous explosion occurs the moment the warhead penetrates the ammunition, and the tank is instantly engulfed in flames. Subsequently, the tank's turret detached from the hole falls to the ground, symbolizing the final destruction of another Russian military facility during a successful defensive operation by Ukrainian troops. There was excellent news from the Donets direction, namely the soldiers of the 60th and 63rd Separate Mechanized Brigades and the military of the 12th Special Forces Brigade. Azov showed the moment how a Ukrainian FP of drones were able to unexpectedly stop an enemy tank that was not expecting an attack from above. The first strike of a Ukrainian FP drone was reported to have been tragic when it crashed into a Russian tank. This point highlights the dangers and risks associated with the use of UNM vehicles in combat conditions, especially in the context of possible collateral casualties among infantry. The second FPV drone makes the final strike on the Russian tank, resulting in its final destruction. This demonstrates the effectiveness of using unmanned aerial vehicles in combat conditions to destroy enemy armored vehicles. The subsequent explosion of the tank has tragic consequences for her crew, depriving them of even the slightest chance of survival. The publication of this video by the Ukrainian military has not only informational but also strategic significance. It is intended to demonstrate the effectiveness of Ukrainian military operations and the capabilities of their weapons, as well as recall the brutal consequences of aggression against Ukraine. There was excellent news from the Donets direction, namely, the soldiers of the 60th and 63rd Separate Mechanized Brigades and the military of the 12th Special Forces Brigade. Azov showed the moment how a Ukrainian FP of drones were able to unexpectedly stop an enemy tank that was not expecting an attack from a boat. The first strike of a Ukrainian FP drone was reported to have been tragic when it crashed into a Russian tank. This point highlights the dangers and risks associated with the use of UNM vehicles in combat conditions, especially in the context of possible collateral casualties among infantry. The second FPV drone makes the final strike on the Russian tank, resulting in its final destruction. This demonstrates the effectiveness of using unmanned aerial vehicles in combat conditions to destroy enemy armored vehicles. The subsequent explosion of the tank has tragic consequences for her crew, depriving them of even the slightest chance of survival. The publication of this video by the Ukrainian military has not only informational, but also strategic significance. It is intended to demonstrate the effectiveness of Ukrainian military operations and the capabilities of their weapons, as well as recall the brutal consequences of aggression against Ukraine. There was excellent news from the Donets direction, namely, the soldiers of the 63rd Separate Mechanized Brigade showed the moment how a Ukrainian tank was shooting at Russian positions in the Lemon direction at close range. After which, the Ukrainian infantry carried out a clearing of the Russian positions. The Ukrainian military is reported to have demonstrated a high level of coordination and tactical readiness in responding to challenges in a combat situation. The use of tank reinforcements in combination with infantry operations made it possible to effectively control the situation on the battlefield and achieve a significant advantage over the enemy. This successful incident highlights not only the combat capability of the Ukrainian armed forces, but also their ability to conduct joint operations between different types of troops. Such actions are an important component of the defense strategy and make it possible to effectively repel enemy aggression in various sectors of the front. There was excellent news from the Donut direction, namely, soldiers of the 79th Separate Air Assault Brigade and soldiers from the Company of Attack on Manned Systems Parang Group destroyed a Russian column of several armored vehicles using an HP drone and artillery, and with skids they are finishing off the Russian infantry. It is reported that Ukrainian intelligence discovered a convoy of Russian equipment on April 19th in the southwest of the village of Slako-Dunas region. This column consisted of 3 armored combat vehicles and 2 Soviet missile tanks. The Ukrainian military, without hesitation, chose the first target, which turned out to be a Russian medal, and began striking with the help of an FPU drone. Then, with the help of a reconnaissance drone, the Ukrainian military noticed how Russian infantry was running away from their destroyed equipment. Meanwhile, the rest of the Ukrainian group is trying to finish off the Russian et al. After this, we can see how one of the units of Russian equipment burns and ignites. And the Ukrainian military is adjusting the artillery and trying to finish off the Russian infantry, who is trying to escape. The exact number of enemy losses is currently being clarified. There was excellent news from the Donetsk direction, namely, fighters of the Shadow unit from the Javelin anti-tank missile system destroyed an infantry fighting vehicle of the Russian invaders, along with its crew, who were traveling to break through the Ukrainian defense line near Maringa. It is reported that the Ukrainian military almost point-blank destroyed the Russian Occupy infantry fighting vehicle, which had additional protection welded to it to repel attacks from anti-tank missile systems. The presented video footage from a drone shows how a Russian infantry fighting vehicle has already approached the positions of Ukrainian forces, and a minute before, it explodes on an anti-tank mine. The crew of the Russian armored vehicle was still inside at that time, but a group of infantry was running next to the armored vehicle and was in support. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian military, without hesitation, is what we see next as a missile from the Javelin anti-tank missile system flies and hits the infantry fighting vehicle directly in the rear. Based on this video, we can conclude that some crew members remained in the armored vehicles forever, since they did not have time to evacuate at the very first moment when the situation still allowed. At the moment when the infantry fighting vehicle hit a mine, and the crew was apparently stunned at that moment, and they received a concussion, so they did not have time to orient themselves and evacuate in time. There was excellent news from the Lugan direction, namely, the fighters of the FP Strike Group Apache unit showed the moment how, with the help of an FP Kamach drone, they destroyed a Russian tanked 8B, them near the village of Privy. It is reported that the Ukrainian military, thanks to recon, discovered a tank of the Russian invaders' 80 BVM model of the year. In 2022, near the village of Private, there is a corresponding video shot by two unmanned aerial vehicles, namely the Observer and the Kamach's drone itself. First drawn footage is shown of the FP exploding on the front of the tank, followed by death footage of the drone itself, and then we see the tank already engulfed in flames. Based on this video, we can conclude that the crew members remained in the tank forever, and this cannot but rejoice, since usually fighters use from 2 to 3 OFP drones so that the tank and its crew are permanently out of action. But in this case, one was enough since the Kamach drone hit a weak point in the tank. There was excellent news from the Sapari direction, namely, soldiers of the 65th Separate Mechanized Brigade showed video footage showing how soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces, with the help of infantry, stormed the basement of Russian troops near Robotyno. The information in the video reportedly highlights the differences in tactics between the Ukrainian and Russian armed forces, especially during the assault on a basement near Robotyno. The Ukrainian military took a strategic approach pre-attacking enemy positions with grenades to ensure a successful offensive. In contrast, the Russian army would probably prefer to attack without a clear plan, relying mainly on a bayonet charge, which could be less effective and lead to unnecessary casualties. Intelligence results indicate that about a dozen Russian occupi were forced to retreat, and some were even exchanged for prisoners, while the rest were successfully destroyed. This success testifies to the high combat capability and effectiveness of the Ukrainian military, emphasizing their readiness to counterattack and defend their territory. There was excellent news from the Donetsk direction, namely the fighters of the 81st Separate Airmobile Brigade showed successful repulsion of an attack by Russian troops northeast of the village of Boloka. The Russian offensive was initially staged closer to the contact line, where the Russians' Tu-64 beef tank encountered backs when it began moving in the wrong direction. After adjusting course, the Russian tank stumbled upon a minefield strategically placed by Ukrainian troops. Ukrainian forces prepared for the offensive by laying minefields the night before using reconnaissance drones for strategic placement. The footage shown shows how a Russian military man gets off the tank, and exactly at that moment, a Ukrainian FPD drone flies into the armored vehicle. As a result, the tank caught fire from an explosion of ammunition, and this fire quickly spread, causing a series of powerful explosions. There was excellent news from the Chen direction, namely, the soldiers of the 73 Naval Special Operations Center showed the destruction of the Russian ammunition along with enemy personnel. Using a variety of weapons, including FP drones, drones with a drop system, and a D-30 howitzer, the operators were able to inflict fire damage on the Russian forces located at the base. The actions took place south of the village of OAC Camp's Thon region. It is reported that according to the data provided, the Russian base was discovered with the help of reconnaissance, on which an ammunition depot and several pieces of equipment were located. Thanks to rapid response and precise coordination of actions, the Ukrainian military was able to provide targeting information to destroy enemy targets. This success underlines the importance of professionalism and modern weapons in the fight against aggressive enemy actions. The Ukrainian military has demonstrated a high level of training and the ability to effectively respond to threats, which is an important factor in ensuring the security of the region. There was excellent news from the Donetsk direction, namely, the Ukrainian military captured the moment when Ukrainian FP CAM's drone attacked two Russian buggies moving along with personnel in the vicinity of A. It is reported that after the arrival of the Ukrainian FPV drone, several Russian soldiers got out of the buggy and immediately fell to the ground, receiving numerous shrapnel wounds from the explosion. Soon, doctors arrived at the scene, but despite their efforts, they could not save the lives of the wounded. Their deaths were a heavy blow to the Russian forces, adding to the negative impact of the buggy attack on their morale. It is also worth noting that this attack involved Chinese buggies called the Desert Cross 1000. One vehicle can accommodate up to 9 military personnel. In total, the Russian army acquired 1,590 such vehicles. The mass of the all-terrain vehicle is 1,600 kilograms, and the carrying capacity is 550 kilograms. However, the engine has a power of only 87 horsepower. This is enough to reach speeds of up to 80 kilometers per hour, and the power reserve is 250 kilometers. There was excellent news from the Donetsk direction, namely, fighters of the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade and operators of the Strike Drones Company unit showed the moment how Ukrainian intelligence. Officers revealed the presence of 6 Russian military personnel in the ruins of a building in the vicinity of the destroyed village of Stavoy. Realizing the threat posed by these Russian military personnel, several FP drones were immediately disatped to eliminate the threat. Ukrainian FP drone operators are reported to have wasted no time in taking responsibility for eliminating this threat. 3 Chakai drones were launched into action. The first Eve-Peeve drone struck with a high explosive charge, after which the Russians were knocked down and they were unable to get out of their cover. But that was only the beginning. The second drone made its way, releasing a debris charge that not only hit the enemy, but also caused a fire that consumed part of the surrounding space. However, knowing about the survivability of Russian soldiers, The Ukrainians did not relax. They sent another FP drone with a high explosive charge to finally end the situation. This day became an indicator of the high professionalism and determination of the Ukrainian military. They demonstrated not only courage and skill in battle, but also a desire to defend their land and their citizens. Despite difficulties and dangers, they continue to fight for peace and security in the region. There was excellent news from the Donetsk direction, namely, fighters of the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade and operators of the Strike Drones Company unit showed video footage showing how a Russian infantryman, left alone, fought for survival in the destroyed village of Borisy Donetsk region, where all his comrades died in battle from Ukrainian FPU drones. He was aware that at any moment he could become a target for Ukrainian Kamaz drones, which were tirelessly scanning the surrounding area in search of targets. Seeing one of these drones approaching on the horizon, the infantryman decided to hide near a tree under an awning in the hope that he would not be noticed. He clung to the ground, trying to blend in with his surroundings, but a drone equipped with an advanced navigation and detection system quickly detected his presence. Another drone strike came suddenly. A strong explosion tore the air, and the infantryman was engulfed in flames. He felt sharp pain from the scattering of fragments, but the force of the blow and the tongs of fire did not allow him to even rise. There was excellent news from the Donetsk direction, namely, fighters of the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade and operators of the Strike Drones Company unit showed the moment how, with the help of an FP drone, they destroyed the positions of Russian drone operators who were launching FPU drones from this location at the positions of the Ukrainian military near the village Borisy. It is reported that the Ukrainian military showed DRWN footage of Russian drone operators hiding in a dugout which was specially disguised with garbage because there was nowhere else to hide. The Ukrainian military, using reconnaissance from drones, can easily monitor the movements of Russian troops who from time to time simply hide in a dugout in the village of Borisy Donetsk region. Further, in the footage shown, we can see how one Russian drone operator clambers out of the basement, which is camouflaged behind heaps of rubbish, and launches his FPU drone in an unknown direction. After this, the Ukrainian military begins an attack using an FP drone, which strikes the dugout where Russian FP drone operators are hiding. As a result, after being hit by an FP drone, a powerful explosion occurs, as a result of which the explosion causes heavy damage to all Russian operators who were hiding in the dugout. And taking advantage of the chaos of the Russians, the Ukrainian military completely clears the Russians and successfully takes up new positions. There was excellent news from the Cherson direction, namely, soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces recorded the moment when the Russian military was on a boat and unloaded ammunition onto the shore. At this time, the Ukrainian shelling carried out with the help of Bacter accurately hit the boat with the Russian military. It is reported that thanks to Ukrainian intelligence and a drone, a Russian boat was discovered on the left bank of the Daner-Thon region. As it turned out later during surveillance, Russian Marines used the boat to transport ammunition closer to their positions. As a result of prolonged surveillance with the help of a Bacter, a rapid attack was carried out on the boat, destroying it and preventing the delivery of ammunition to enemy positions. This successful strike underscores the high level of professionalism and readiness of the Ukrainian armed forces to act quickly and decisively in an armed conflict. There was excellent news from the Donetsk direction, namely, fighters of the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade and operators of the Strike Drones Company unit showed how the Russian drone jamming system, which was installed on an armored vehicle, is not able to protect its armored vehicles. The beginning of the video reportedly shows an abandoned Russian armor vehicle, an infantry fighting vehicle, with a drone jammer installed on top. This equipment designed to protect against drone attacks is a key element of the analysis. Next comes the drone attack, where the video shows a Ukrainian FPD drone successfully avoiding a complex of jammers and hitting a Russian infantry fighting vehicle. This episode highlights the ineffectiveness of the jamming system and the vulnerability of Russian armored vehicles to modern unmanned technology. The video illustrates the growing role of drones in modern combat operations and highlights the need for continuous improvements in defense against them. This is a reminder of the importance of adapting defense measures to evolving threats and the need to invest in modern defense technologies.